Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiral Out Podcast. I'm your host, Chris West. On today's show, we have Maxx242. What's your last name? Your actual last name? Starts with a G, right?
My last name is Gramajo.
Max is an amazing poster artist. He has done a million different posters over the years. One of the more recent ones, and what we talk about on the podcast a lot is, Puscifer, Tool, APC, and stuff like that. You did the Met Philly poster, right? And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I've only done two other podcasts. I've done two, and this is my third one. So it's interesting.
It's a thing for sure. I mean, I kind of started by just realizing how many different poster artists there were just within the couple of bands that I really like. And I just wanted to know more,
And the poster art, the whole thing with poster art, it's been existing for a long time. There's been a lot of bands that use poster art, game posters, and a lot of artists that have been a part of it. But in the 90s, I remember there was a lot of really classic, good artists that were doing it that I was really inspired by. But then in about the 2010, more bands started doing it again. Just the poster art and posters, big posters started to really explode.
Right.
And so by 2015, it was huge. Like, it was a thing. And I'm super thankful because that's what I do most of the time is gig posters. But man, I didn't expect it to become what it is. Like I look at your background, I look at all the posters that are there. It's pretty intense how many poster artists and posters there are now.
And that's just the ones on the wall.
I can imagine, man.
I got a portfolio under my tablet where your head is sitting. And then I don't know if you can see it right there. I have another portfolio open.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
With your poster right there.
The Philadelphia one.
Yeah. I got so many questions, by the way. Let's kind of start with your history. You're originally from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I was born in New Jersey. I was born out there. I lived in Queens for a few years, and then I moved to Los Angeles, and I lived in downtown Los Angeles for a while. And after that, I've just moved all around Southern California. I've lived in Orange County. I've lived in the Inland Empire, Riverside County. I've lived in San Diego. And right now I'm back in Anaheim. I'm back in Orange County. So I've been in Anaheim for several years now, for 8 years or so in the Orange County area.
So I grew up in the same area. I currently live in Las Vegas, but
okay.
I grew up in like Hawthorne, Gardena, Lawndale, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach area. Went to Dodger games my whole childhood. And
Yeah.
Looking at your art, especially me, I'm in my mid 30s, but it seems like your art specifically, even though you're from New Jersey, you must have moved to LA somewhat young because your art is very LA to me.
Yeah, I moved to LA when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So I basically lived my whole life in Southern California.
And I'm sure you hear that a lot, like how, Southern California, your art is, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I hear it a lot. I get kind of pigeonholed in that, and I never realized that it's taking everything that I grew up with, my everything around me, everything that was trending or popular in this area, and it's influenced me a lot. It's what I grew up with.
And again, I don't want to be a part of that pigeonhole because you obviously can do a lot of amazing different things with your art.
Yeah.
I mean, from the Metallica posters, to the Dave Matthews, and you've just done so many. Even the Puscifer posters. I mean, that one doesn't inherently look LA, the Met poster. But if you look, I guess, if you go through your Instagram and like, I went through your whole Instagram, from day one and kind of seen, I guess, somewhat of a progression. Then you can pick out elements like the hard black lines, just again, certain line movements. And you're like, okay, I can see how you got there, I guess, and just refined your style. That's
one thing that I don't know. It's if you look at my art, you can, and if you know my story, you know why my art looks the way it does. I grew up with 80s Saturday morning cartoons. I grew up with with comic books. Comic books were a big thing for us. We collected since we were little, you know, the X-Men days, and um, I've always enjoyed DC comics, Batman, Nightwing, all that stuff. There you go. Yeah, love it. So I grew up with all that, and so in being interested in that, I really fell in love with the art. I fell in love with the artist. I really enjoy, you know, McFarlane stuff on Marvel, Del Keown, Sam Keith, you know, uh, the guys at Top Cow who eventually became Top Cow, Mark Silvestri. I really enjoyed their work, and one of the guys that I really looked at was later on was Arthur Adams. I felt like Arthur Adams' line work kind of really paved the way for a lot of comic book artists, the way that he utilized the brushes and the pens. And I just if you look at my work, there's a lot of black and white line work, and there's pieces that I do that have no black and white artwork. It's a lot of more painterly or airbrushed feel. But I really enjoy the black and white line work. It's what I grew up with, it's comic books and other artists. So I utilize that a lot. And as far as the content goes, um, I really enjoy sci-fi storylines, sci-fi movies, sci-fi and horror movies. But it has kind of a mixture between comic book and graffiti art feel. So it's not so
100%.
dark.
Yeah, 100%. Like,
Yeah. So
I'm trying to think of the one. It's Dave Matthews one. It's like purple. It's like the
yeah,
silhouette of the girl's face. I think that's like in my opinion, when I think of you, like my brain goes there
yeah.
because it's like
So that's kind
sci-fi,
of
fantasy, but
right.
also like,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's just trying to tell a story, trying to bring you in and look at every corner of the piece and understand that there's something more there. And that's what fantasy is to me, is really creating an atmosphere, creating something deeper than just the lines and the colors. It's really pulling you in and going, okay, what's going on here? And that's what I enjoy about fantasy storylines and fantasy art.
So I'm going to ask a little bit about your history. Um, so me growing up in Southern California, again, I don't know how old you are, but when I was in high school, I can't draw, but I have friends who were also graffiti artists. I mean, obviously not to the extent as you, but I mean, I roamed around with them like in the middle of the night while they're throwing up tags in different places, and they carried around like a scalpel for different things, and
Yeah.
they had a million different tips. Can you kind of touch on that? Like, did you roam around as a small child doing illegal things?
I grew up at that age. I was in the Riverside area, and yeah, I did go out, write graffiti and do some illegal work, and I got arrested a few times. I did community service because I wasn't 18 yet. The last time I got arrested, I was actually right and just turned 18. So they still just gave me community service, and the judge was actually really cool, man. He looked at what I was doing, because what I got caught doing I wasn't on the freeways at that time. I did go out on the streets and the freeways, but when I got caught the last time, I was up on an old water tank, like an old water reservoir that was abandoned, and I was just painting a mural up there. And so they took pictures of all that, and when I went to court, the judge saw what I was doing, and it was like a portrait type thing. And he was just like, what, why are you doing this? And I told him, I said, you know, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, how you supposed to practice?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't, and you know, back then street art wasn't a thing. There was no such genre that was called street art. It was all graffiti art and vandalism. This was in the mid '90s. So, you know, it was hard for people to understand what we were doing. A lot of people just didn't understand it. You know, it was kind of new, and everything that everybody knew about it was vandalism. So the judge, however, really took a look at it, and he was like, you know, you have a talent. And I said, okay, thanks. And he was just like, he was like, I can do so much right now, but really, I just really want you to get your shit together. So I'm going to give you some community service, and I hope that you find your way. And that was it. I think he gave me like 40 hours of community service, and that was it. And I had restitution charge, which was like $150 or something.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all. So when did you start turning it into a professional career? Like, what was your first, like, oh shit, man, like I can do this for a living?
You know, it was all kind of the same, and it all kind of melted together, because my upbringing isn't like a fairy tale story or anything like that. I grew up in a Hispanic household. My mom was the really the backbone of the house. My dad was never there. He actually was an alcoholic. He was very missing in my life, and so we didn't have a lot. We didn't have a lot. My mom was making and was doing her best to make ends meet. So what I would do is when I was in school, I started drawing on people's hats and backpacks and drawing flyers for house parties and things like that, and they would give me a little bit of money. And so when I got out of school, I kind of continued that, and I started going business to business and asking to see if anybody needed a logo or anything. One of the big things was my friend Jeff Soto. He met up with a lady that was doing window painting, window art. So for the holidays, we bought some equipment. It wasn't much, and we started going business to business, asking if they wanted their windows painted for the holidays. They wanted snowmen and Santa Claus and things like that. We ended up making a couple grand.
That's not bad.
It was pretty rad.
Yeah.
And then from there, one of my other friends opened up a print shop. And so I asked him if he needed a graphic artist, which he really didn't need a graphic artist. He had somebody. They did a lot of typesetting there. It wasn't what graphic design is today. So I offered it to him, and I told him, just pay me per piece. Don't pay me like an hourly or a salary or anything. Just pay me per piece. 1 sec. And so whenever a client would come in, I would offer my services to them, and that's kind of how I started. I started doing that, and I think one of the biggest pieces in my life was actually my relationship to Travis Barker. I met because Travis was from the Riverside area,
yeah,
and my friends actually knew him, and he wasn't. This was before his Blink-182 days. He was in a band called the Aquabats, which
I love the Aquabats.
They were one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I love them. And so my friends, they knew that we would go to all the Aquabat show, and they worked at a retail store that was pretty popular. It was an alternative retail store. And so the Aquabats would come in, and they knew them. And so they were like, hey, Christian and Travis are coming in today. And I was like, right. And they were like, dude, meet it. Come over and so you can meet them. I'll introduce them to them. And that's how I met Travis, was at that store. And we had some hip hop art shows, and I didn't know he was into hip hop at the time. And so he came to our shows, and him and I kind of became friends. And he got in Blink-182, and he started an apparel line called Famous Stars and Straps.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I started doing artwork for them, and I got hired on as their full-time artist, and I was there about 10 years.
Is that Stars and Straps, right?
Yeah, Famous Stars and Straps. But the way that I met my friends from the retail shop was because we went door to door from business to business, sure, offering the window painting.
So it's just,
and that's how we met them.
It's just completely DIY, started from literally the ground up on your feet, walking around.
Yeah.
And you walked right into Travis Barker, eventually.
Yeah.
How is that Famous Stars still around?
I think they're still around. I think they're kind of regrouping, and they're working on something new, I believe. I haven't spoken to anybody there in a while, but from what I understand, they're still working on it.
When did your first gig poster come up? Was it an Aquabats one?
No, I did Aquabats art, and I had shown it to Christian and Travis at the time that I met them, and I believe they kept the pieces. So I don't know whatever happened to them. But I didn't end up doing anything for the Aquabats. When Travis started his line, Famous Stars and Straps, I was a full-time artist. And while I was there, the first couple of years, he started a band with Tom, I believe, that was called Boxcar Racer.
Yeah, I love that band.
And yeah, I really like their music. And so while I was working there, I decided to do. I wasn't asked to do a gig poster. I decided to do a painting for them. And so I did, because I liked their music. So I did, and that's what I always did. Music influenced me. I was always influenced by music, and my art reflected that. So I did this little painting, and I gave it to them, and they're like, "Oh, let's use it as a poster." And it wasn't a screen printed poster. It wasn't like an official gig poster. It was a poster it was like a marketing piece that they released for their tour. After that, the merchandise manager for Blink-182, he saw what I was doing. He worked with me. I ended up doing one of the logos for Boxcar Racer, which was the typography. And I worked with the merchandise manager along with Travis, and he helped me out. So he was the merchandise manager for Blink 182, and then he ended up being the merchandise manager for other bands. So him and I became really good friends. He is actually, I want to say this guy is responsible for a lot of gig posters now. He was like the dude at the front line. His name is Kris Siglin, and he goes by T-shirt, TSURT on Instagram.
TSURT?
Yeah, and he ended up being the merchandise manager for so many bands. And so my first official gig poster, I did another tour poster for Blink 182 in 2009, but my first official tour poster was for Pearl Jam because Kris Siglin was the merchandise manager for Pearl Jam. So it was interesting because a lot of people start out with small bands, small venues, this and that. I jumped right into Pearl Jam.
Yeah, you're like, here's one of the biggest touring acts in the last 30 years, and probably one of the top 10 bands that do gig posters different every show, right?
Yeah, and so I jumped in just swinging, and it was I was really nervous to do it because I knew who they were. I mean, obviously everybody knew who they were, but I knew what they were doing with gig posters. And as an artist, it was a little intimidating, coming in and trying to do a piece for them. And so I did a little research. I knew that they were really into old skate art, skateboard art, and just the skate scene. So I decided to reference one of my favorite artists, Jim Phillips, and did a Santa Cruz reference for the first poster that I did.
You want to hear something funny?
What's that?
Guess who I interviewed right before you? Jimbo Phillips.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Jim and Jimbo are awesome, man. Yeah. And I love how Jimbo kind of carries Jim Phillips' like spirit, like the art is there. Like he definitely has that Jim Phillips feel.
And I think he kind of takes it in a more heavier direction, in my opinion, too. It's like he's kind of same style, same work, but like kind of getting his own groove.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, definitely he does. He has his own, he definitely has his own voice there. So, yeah, I referenced Jim Phillips for that piece. And anybody that isn't familiar with his art, or even if you are, it's not like a Jim Phillips knock. It's just like a nod to Jim Phillips.
Sure.
The composition. Yeah, after that, I did a few more Pearl Jam posters. I did some Soundgarden posters, and I started doing more Blink posters. And then the merchandise manager for the band 311 contacted me, and I think that's probably the band that I've done the most posters for is 311. I just had to have a good friendship with this guy, Mike Dolan, and it's been awesome. And so from there, it just kind of just snowballed after that, and that's mostly what I do today is gig posters.
Let's touch on the Puscifer poster if you don't mind. I'm somewhat new when it comes to how gig posters are done nowadays. I started off with like tool ones, and they have like a completely different system on how they get the art, find the artist, print. Now getting into the Puscifer stuff, it's kind of how it's done with most bands. So can you kind of go through the process of like how somebody contacts you and just the nitty gritty, I guess?
So with this Puscifer poster, because I've done Puscifer once or twice before, and with this one, when they contacted us, they actually had a theme that they wanted the artist to go with, which was the theme of their tour, which was like the whole conspiracy, alien, Men in Black type feel. So they gave us some art direction, which usually with posters we usually don't get any art direction. It's kind of like they leave it up to us. But Puscifer and another one is Primus. They've actually given us art direction. They're like, this is what our tour is, and this is the theme of the tour. So they gave us the art direction, which is as was what I mentioned. And so from there, I take that. Whenever I create a poster for a band, I sit down and I listen to the music. That's one of the first things that I do. I go in and I engulf myself with their sound and what they're doing and their lyrics. With this one, however, because the theme was was so black and white. There was
specific.
Like, it was just a hard thing that this is what they wanted. I tried to stay with that, and then I incorporated a couple little pieces of Philadelphia, but I kind of snuck it in. And the main pieces were the skyline, and then a nod to one of my favorite movie franchises, which is Rocky. Yeah, I threw the reflection of the Rocky statue in there. And the funny thing is that I did a Primus poster last year, and one of the things that happened was because of COVID and because of the way that the mail was, the shipping was, everything was slowed down. So we were very worried that the posters were going to make it to the venue on time. So I hopped on a flight to Philadelphia, and I took the posters myself to the venue. It was for a few different venues that I took the posters, and I met them in Philadelphia. And while I was there, I decided to go look at to visit the Rocky statue and the steps and everything. And I took pictures of everything. So when I did this, I had all these pictures of all these different angles and everything of the Rocky statue. And so when I got in, they mentioned Philadelphia. I was like, wow, I was just there. So it was rad. So it worked out really well.
That's awesome. So when we're creating this specific poster, you have in mind like Alien, Men in Black, Philadelphia. Again, having the poster, right behind me. How do you choose like that, specific alien head ship, beam and like, so, how do you make your artistic decisions, if you don't mind me asking?
It's actually harder than you would believe, because as an artist, there are a million ideas. There are so many ideas. So for this one, I actually did several sketches, and I worked with with their management to figure out what really would work best. So I did a couple ones that were very busy, and they decided that they wanted something a little less complex, which honestly I felt was the better choice, because I wanted something that when you look at it was very impactful. It grabbed you. So when something's very busy, it's a little harder to give you a focal point. So in them mentioning that they wanted one that was a little less complex, it really helped me kind of hone in on what the story was and what the focal point was going to be. And so when I sent it to them, they really liked it, and they were like, "This is the one," and that's what we ended up going with. It was a lot of fun.
Do you? Sorry, excuse me. Do you have those other sketches handy?
I do actually. Let me look.
Would it be crazy if you let me see them, and we can maybe I don't want to post anything.
I'm looking for them searching for them right now. That's all.
And while you're looking, I got another question. Are you doing one for the second leg?
As of right now, I'm not. I don't believe. I haven't heard anything right now.
So when you were making again, while you're looking for that, while you were making these sketches, was it all digital?
Yes, it was all digital. I do all my inking digitally now.
I'm very excited to see these alternate versions.
Okay, I found one of the sketches. Let me send it to you. I'll send it to you on Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out real quick.
I didn't see the other ones, but this was one of them. There's one. There's the other one that was very complex.
It's so drastically different, but not at the same time. Yeah. Like you can see the elements, like they're all there. I really like the spaceman stuff, like the dude with the flag.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, because it was like the whole. If you look at the spaceman angle of it, it's the spaceman with the camera in front of him, and so it's basically like that whole that conspiracy theory that we never landed on the moon.
Yeah, the faking the moon landing type stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's great. And then you got a couple of spaceships. You can see the elements of like, the eyes in the new one or the finished product. No, that's super awesome. That's awesome. I really appreciate you showing me that. And then so you take this process, you kind of because I see the skyline in the first one in the eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's in the second one. This one's a little bit more.
That's the one. So there was a few of those of that version. Mm-hmm. There was actually a couple different ones, and I can't find the other one right now. But it was more zoomed in on the guy that was getting beamed up. He was like the bigger focal point of it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was a nice composition, but I felt like really taking the symmetrical aspect of the alien's eyes worked a little bit better with the composition. So I zoomed in on that, and I sent both of them to them, and they said it was just super busy. And so after I did the big alien face and the eyes and the guy being cleaned up, I was like, this right here is a very, very interesting composition. So I just blew that up, and I went with that when I resketched it out. I'll send you that sketch. I have that sketch right here.
Man, you're so awesome. Thank you.
So when I did that, I was like, man, that's it right there. I loved it.
I kind of missed the space.
And I was hoping
guy.
that's what they going with.
Like I can see taking out the Sphinx, and the Mr. Smith looking man in black.
Yeah.
But this, I don't know if I would have been. I don't know if I would have. And again, your poster is amazing. It was one of the first ones where I wasn't at the show, and I was like, I still got to get that. Like,
right.
But so again, this is coming from a guy who doesn't do what you do, but I freaking love the space camera flag thing. I'm like, damn, Puscifer, you should have said yes to that.
Yeah, I liked it, and I like creating very complex compositions at times. Things that you really got to look at every part of it.
So since you're doing these on digital, because it was funny, Jimbo Phillips showed me a sketch that he did, for his poster, and it's like on paper. These ones,
right?
Do you have to print them out and mess with them at all, or do anything of that nature? Or is it just all strictly?
No. The programs that I use are it's kind of like doing it by hand. So I use Photoshop to do all the sketching, and then I can erase and move things around in Photoshop, and it's like doing it by hand, just a little bit faster. So I use Photoshop to do that, and then I use a program called Clip Studio where I do all my inking in all my line work. And so Clip Studio has brushes in there that feel very, very traditional. So it's kind of like I have the brush in my hand and I'm inking. It's really nice. And then I bring it back into Photoshop to do the rendering. Just because I like the way that Photoshop feels and the way that I'm able to separate the colors for print.
So explain the rendering process, if you don't mind. So you do this sketch. You do this sketch that, you get this guy going. You're like, all right, I'm happy with that. You bring it into your Clip Studio and you start doing your solid black lines and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you take that and you move it back over to Photoshop and you start filling in the color, right? In different layers is what I'm guessing.
It's in layers, but the thing is because it's being screen printed, and the way that screen print works, you have to give the separated colors. So you have to send separations to the printer. And that gets a little bit complicated because you have to knock things out. You have to know how things work.
Sure.
So you have to have an understanding of how the colors are going to lay down on top of each other. And that's the toughest part. The other thing is that I use a lot of fades in my pieces. So when you're doing the fades, you have to learn how to, for lack of better words, pixelize them or halftone them, because you can't do anything soft. When it's screen printed, everything has to have a hard edge to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really having that understanding of how the colors are gonna sit on top of each other or with each other, and creating the image in that manner so that it doesn't become a big mess for you to separate. Everybody separates their work differently. A lot of people flatten their pieces and then select each color with a color picker. I do it as I go. So I try to keep every color separated and I knock things out in the end and lay them on top of each other how I like to. So I always have to keep that in mind when I'm rendering. I have to keep in mind the color sequence. So which color is going to go on top of what, and render that way. So then I pick my palette. I decide what colors I want it to be. I try to stick with complementary colors as much as possible: green and red, blue and orange, and purple and yellow. I just look at complementary colors that work well together, and I start putting them in, and I decide which one's gonna push back and which one's gonna come forward. So if I want to have warm up front, I keep all my warm colors up front, or if I want to keep my cool colors in front and warm in the back, I decide that way. So I pick my palette, decide what's going to be the focal point, and the temperature that I want it, and kind of go from there.
And I'm guessing somebody had to teach you this process at one point, or did you just kind of experiment?
Mostly experiment. I had a screen printer, a friend of ours, sit down with me and kind of explain it to me a little bit, but it's mostly been experimental.
And then I've always been curious about this because I'm relatively new at this, is the different types of paper. You got your normal, gig poster paper, and then they do foils, and they do swirl foils,
Yeah.
and they do gold foils and sparkle foils. And how interested are you in like the different papers and foils and whatnot?
I am not very interested in foils. I really just am not. I create art one way, and that is what I want my art to look like. So when it comes time to pick variant paper stocks, it's very, very hard for me because I created the artwork and that is how I wanted it to look. Sometimes I'll create artwork for foil specifically, while I'll have different areas knocked out to be in foil. But the thing is that it's just it's not easy to control to push things forward and push things back, pull things back, when you don't have control of what the foil is going to reflect.
And also, I've heard, and again, I'm relatively new at screen printing knowledge, but you're very limited on how many colors you can use as well, right? Like once you get like above 6, it becomes like super expensive.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, you have to be very strategic with the colors you're going to use and how you're going to use them. I'm sending you a few more pieces here right now.
Fair enough.
You can see right now. You're actually,
oh wow,
the only person I've showed this to.
Thank you. I won't share it if you don't want me to. I love the lettering. So this was the process. You did the black and white, then you did it's like the blue color, then you did the green over that.
Yep. So that's the process right there. So you can see how the colors lay, where the color, like what colors lay and how.
Wow. So does black count as a color?
Yes, it does.
So
white doesn't count as a color.
So 1, 2, 3. What's the fourth one? The fourth one's like that purple, I think. Yeah, purple. 4.
Yeah.
5.
And in the show version, it was actually red. But this was the artist variant.
I think I got the red one. I think I have the show one. Yeah, this is the purple one. What was the last color?
Kind of interesting,
yellow,
right? To see it all together.
Yeah, no, it's more than fascinating because again, you just to see it from sketch, different sketches to then final sketch to then jumping to, the first black, and it's like, wow, it's there. Like that's there. And tell you the truth, this is one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. Just going from, and thank you for sharing. Just, I think a lot of people are weary to show these types of things. But in me, it's just, again, because I can't draw, but I'm very interested in the process. This is fucking cool, man. like good job. I guess, what else did I say? Other than like, thank you. And that's awesome. And wow.
It's actually very time consuming. I showed you the colors on top of each other, but I didn't show you like each color by itself. Mm-hmm. And each color by itself is it's cutting out the highlights and shaping every layer to give it shape, to give it dimension to the piece. But you can kind of see it as we go. But
sure, no, I can definitely tell. Like this explains a lot, because I kept trying to think. Okay, they have to layer the colors, but how? How do they layer the colors? And right. I guess my question is so when you do this first sketch, do you do one before you lay? Well, no, you said you layer the colors as you go, right? Some people do it all at once and then, color pick, right?
Yeah.
But you're just doing it. And then, hey, I know where my greens are going to go. I know where my orange or blue's going. I know where my orange is going to go now. And then I'll finish it off with the yellow.
Yeah. So a lot of times I do a quick thumbnail of as to what my color is going to look like. I don't think I did it for this one. I didn't find it in my file. Because I already had a really good idea. So the way that I do it is, again, because I use so many fades. Like I use an airbrush to render, a soft airbrush to render. So there's a lot of fades. So there's going to be colors that are going to sit on top of each other as opposed to trapping the color. So trapping the color is a whole other thing, and you can see it where the spaceship and the letters are. So the blue, is knocked out of the letters. So I trap the blue right there. So it has to go partially into the black outline, but not into the green area.
I understand.
So you trap colors.
I understand what you're saying. So it doesn't bleed.
Right, exactly. But a lot of my work is airbrush. So I let the colors sit on top of each other. So I have to be very, very strategic as to what colors are going to lay well on top of each other. So I keep like my greens and my blues and my oranges and my yellows all together. And sometimes it comes out a little bit dark because once you start stacking the colors, too many colors on top of each other, it just gets darker and darker.
Sorry, I'm looking at the sketch and then I'm kind of going back and looking at the finished product. Because it looks fucking perfectly separated, where it needs to be. And then, like you said, airbrushed in certain parts, kind of, like the blue in the face on top of the green.
Yeah. So I have to be very strategic as to what colors are going to lay on top of each other. So the one thing that I try to do is, because we are limited in color, I try to keep families of colors that share a light color. A lot of times, a light yellow or yellow can cross over to blues and greens and oranges, because when you go red, orange, yellow, that's a dark to medium to light transition. And then you go green, light, green, yellow, again, that's going from dark to medium to light transition. So I try to keep these families of colors and then use the light color in both of them, because again, we have minimal colors to work with. So if you look at it, yellow goes across the entire piece. It is the lightest color.
Yeah. It's, kind of starts in the middle, and it's almost like the highlights of the face. And
exactly. In the background and in the middle. Yeah. So the yellow is shared through the entire poster.
I'm getting what you're putting down, my friend. Again, you're schooling me right now, and I really appreciate it, because again, I spent 6 months figuring out how they did the tool stuff and the process there, and screen printing is completely different there. This.
So the only thing I would say is, if you want to share the process of it, I would go ahead, except for the sketches that did not get approved. Gotcha. I wouldn't share those. So you can share everything else. The sketch, to the inking, to the color layouts, all of that. You can share all of that stuff.
I really appreciate that. That's fucking awesome. I wouldn't have if you didn't. I would show friends on my phone, like, hey, did you see this? Look what I got to see.
Yeah, no, you can go ahead and share that. It's just the sketches that didn't get approved. I wouldn't share those. That's it.
No worries. I won't. I will
those
not.
Are for your eyes only.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. So getting back into, once you're done screen printing, and you said there was a couple times you had to take these personally yourselves. Are they screen printed at a different company, or are you doing them personally?
No, we have a few different screen printers that we work with, and it really comes down to time. These are all very time sensitive because it's for a show. It's a lockdown. There's a drop dead date that these posters have to be at the venue. And some of the work that I work on isn't as time sensitive, logos for people. They don't need it right away or whatever. We have time. But these are very time sensitive. So what happens is, because I have so much work stacked back to back to back, sometimes I'm not gonna meet a printer's deadline. So some printers want the posters 2 months in advance. Some printers want them a month in advance. And there's some printers that can turn around in 2 weeks and 2 weeks ahead of time. So depending on my schedule, I decide, okay, I'm not going to be able to get it done in this time frame, so that automatically cuts out this printer. I can't use this printer. So I just kind of create a calendar, and I try to hit that calendar. That calendar, I have to juggle it, because so many projects come up. There's different deadlines that come up, different things that come up. So I juggle this calendar, which is probably the hardest thing for me to do. As an artist, my time frame isn't the best at times. But I juggle this calendar, and so far, I have not missed a day yet. So I'm very thankful about it.
I don't know if anybody has ever told you that, but good job then.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. I guess when you tell me about your calendar, I'm curious if you ever get like, oh, I'm doing this Puscifer one, but I got a Pearl Jam that's due in a couple days, and like, do you ever get flustered, I guess, and of like, shit, I actually was supposed to use that color on Pearl Jam and this color on 311.
There are times where I feel that the palettes crossed over too much. There are times where I was like, oh man, I just did that for 311, and I shouldn't have done that for Puscifer or whatever. There are times where they do cross over, or I'll be drawing something, so like I'll have two pieces in the works for 311, and then I jump on a Metallica one, and the story in my head transfers over.
That's what I was curious about.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
Unintentionally, it transfers over, and I'm like, okay, no, this isn't Metallica. I had to scrap and restart over and be like, okay, Metallica. So like it does. It gets a little crazy in my head at times.
So obviously Metallica's, posters that I've seen you do and other people do, very skull influenced.
Very skull influenced.
Have you ever tried to submit them one that had no skull?
I'm trying to think right now.
I think there was
I have actually.
Was there like a Cthulhu one you guys did? Like
I did a Cthulhu one, and I did a snake one where it was the logo, and I made it out of stone, kind of breaking apart, and there was a snake going through it, and it was almost crushing the logo.
Sure.
And that was actually a very, very popular poster for me.
Good. I have one Metallica poster. I'm not like I don't want to say I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of all music, but the art that I collect is very specific, and I can't falter or I'll be a poor man.
And the Tool posters are rad. I love those Tool posters that you have. I can't remember the artist in the top left of you, top right of me. I want to say it's David Gray, but I don't think it is. That one, yeah.
Oh, Alex Gray?
Alex Gray, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love his work.
And then you got Alex Kuno in the middle.
Right.
And then that is Audie.
Okay.
He's a big comic book artist as well.
Okay.
And then
it's hard. It's a little hard.
Yeah, there's so many.
Yeah,
there's so many.
It's so rad though, man. Posters and music to me they're just everything. Aside from it's how I mostly make my living, it's just I love music, man. Like
same.
I don't know how we could exist without it. Music is really everything, and creating these stories and these visual pieces that go along with it's amazing. It's everything to me. Somebody
asked me like one time, Kris, you spent so much money and time and you do this podcast, and why? Like, what do you get out of, collecting these pieces of paper? And one, I'm like, everybody collects something, first of all.
Yeah.
But for me specifically, whether or not, you're into 311 or Dave Matthews, Pearl Jam, whatever, it's like extending the show. I go to a concert,
yeah.
I hang out with friends, I hang out with people. There's a whole dynamic, there's people that don't get along. There's people that are best friends. You know what I'm saying? There's this whole universe at the show. And then you go see the band, hopefully you can get a poster in me, and sometimes you don't. But you get this thing that you can take home. And again, if you're collecting them, the universe continues,
Yeah.
You trade with people, you learn about artists, you learn about bunch of different things, you just continue that universe outside of the concert. Right.
I look at it as like art in general, the posters, the whatever we create is it's our hieroglyphics. It's what it's the stories that we're leaving. Sure. and we're creating. And it's kind of like we learn so much from the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Egyptians and past cultures and history itself, by looking at the writings on the wall, by looking at art. And this is what this is. Like you said, this is an extension of that moment, and then an extension and just continuing the universe. It's an extension of the universe, and that's what we're doing. This is, again, to me, this is what we do. This is who we are, and this is how we as humans will continue to maintain our humanity and continue to share history and life and stories.
I couldn't agree more. The only thing that makes me upset about it is I found it so late in life, and not late, but like I found it in my 30s. I'm like, damn, I went to so many shows as a kid and stuff, and like, what the hell was I doing? Yeah. And pretty much the answer to that is I was just poor. I was just really poor and couldn't afford posters, and now I'm not as poor and can.
I have a handful of posters. I don't know if you can see the one behind me right here. That's actually my holy grail. That's my.
I heard you were a big Spawn fan.
That's my. What is it? Piece de Resistance. That's my treasure.
Sure, your grail.
That is a collaboration that I did with Todd Mcfarlane for Pearl Jam. So it has both of our signatures on it. We both created it together, collaborated on it, and it was for Pearl Jam. So that is
the holy grail for you. Yeah. So I got a couple.
Mine.
I was going to bring that up actually. One, who initiated that collaboration? Was it you?
I did.
You were like, hey, Todd, I'm an artist. You're an artist. Let's do a Pearl Jam poster together.
Okay, so the way that came to be had to do with my time at Famous Stars and Straps. While I was at Famous Stars and Straps, we were looking for just something new, something different in our industry. And I had met a friend of mine, Tracy Tubera, who was working with Todd Mcfarlane and the Mcfarlane crew. And so I had come up with I had talked to him, and I was like, man, I would love for us to collaborate with Mcfarlane. He was like, let me put you in contact with one of their managers. And I said, man, that would be great. So I brought it to Travis's attention, and I was like, hey, we might be able to work with Todd Mcfarlane. And the first thing that Travis thought of was, you know what, they were doing music figures at the time.
Yeah. So
we thought, you know what would be great is for him, because Mcfarlane did Slash, they did Motorhead, they did all these figures, just iconic musicians. So we had thought about doing a Travis Barker figure, and it never came to be. I thought it would have been great. I think Mcfarlane was the right person to do it because Travis is very animated. He's a character, man. He's like, you can't miss Travis. Like
I'm a drummer myself. He's very unique movements and styles, and
very unique. So I thought it was great. So Tracy Terrell put us in contact. We started talking to Mcfarlane about it, and in meeting him and talking to his whole team, we decided. I brought it. I was like, hey, why don't we do a collaboration with the apparel line? Take your art and put it on our apparel line and do a collaboration there. And they loved it. So we did that. So then less than a year later is when Chris Ziglin, who was the merchandise manager, the guy who got me in really into the poster game, he's like, hey, I have this project that I want to do, and I want you to be a part of it, but you have to find somebody that would really make it, because it's a collaboration project. So Pearl Jam did this series of collaborations. And so Chris left it up to me. He was like, you need to find somebody that's really gonna make this story. And he didn't know that I was working with Todd the year before.
Little did he know.
No, he didn't know. So I reached out to Todd's team because I was in touch with them, and we became friends. So I became friends with the entire team. They're super awesome people. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, I think Todd had worked with Pearl Jam before. They're doing these set of posters, and they're actually really, really successful, and they do great. I think it would be cool for Todd to do it. I have this project, and I need somebody to collaborate with, and Todd would be perfect. And so my friend Joey goes and talks to Todd, and he comes back to me and said, yeah, Todd's in. He wants to do it. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, just give us the details. And I was like, all right. So I reached out to Chris Ziglin, and I go, hey, I got someone to collaborate with. And he was like, who? I was like, Todd Mcfarlane. And he was quiet. He's like,
stop fucking with me. Who do you got?
It was Mcfarlane. And I was like, how did you do that? I was like, I called him. I called him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did. Is I called them, and I talked to Todd. I had a call with Todd, and it's very surreal because I had worked with Todd before. It wasn't the first time working with Todd, but this time what had happened was very, very, very interesting and surreal. He goes, Max, he's like, I love your work. He's like, I want you to direct me. He's like, I want you to create the story, and I want you to direct this piece. You're in control. I was like, it was scary. I was nervous. I was like, okay. So I thought that actually incorporating medieval spawn into the story would be rad to kind of come up with like this fantasy piece and make it like a comic book cover and take the Spawn logo and create a Pearl Jam logo out of it. And I thought it just all mixed well. And so I did the sketch and I drew it up and I sent it to them and they loved it. And sent it to Pearl Jam and they were super into it, and we just got it going from there. And it was.
And they probably sold out in like 10 seconds.
It actually, I think I want to say it crashed our server at the time.
Yeah. Oof. No, when I was looking up your stuff, that one came up. And again, I just figured you were a comic book fan. I didn't know it was a collaboration until you told me. I figured it was just like a nod. Like, hey, I really like Todd and Spawn. And like, here's a tip of the hat. But to now know that you worked with him on it, it's like, no wonder. I actually saw like that poster online, I think for like $3,000 or some shit.
Yeah. It goes for some money, man.
That's awesome. No, that's intense. I'm guessing you've done a ton of different collaborations, but that's got to be like you said, epitome, holy grail stuff. So on that collaboration, you did the original drawing?
I did the original sketch, the concept for it. When we're done with the podcast, I'll see if I can dig them up and I'll send them over to you. So that's the whole step. We actually put them up on our F4D Studios page. I did the initial idea, and then he penciled the medieval spawn, and I penciled the little creature that medieval spawn was fighting, and he inked it, I inked it, and then I created the logo and got the approval from him, and I did all of the coloring. I did all of that. I laid it all out and then shot him the final for approval and then shot it over to program once Todd approved it.
Wow. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions and then I'll let you get back to your day. I know I'm taking some of your time.
It's okay.
These are kind of a little bit of ridiculous questions. I hear you collect Star Wars figures. Yeah.
I've been collecting Star Wars figures since they rebooted the movies in 1994, I want to say, 94, 95. And I started collecting figures in general, and really had to do with McFarlane. Like, he put out his Spawn figures at the time in the early mid 90s. And so I started collecting toys, and I've been collecting toys since then. And I have some little gems here and there. I have some little trophies. So I collect toys in general.
So what do you think it is about, because again, I collect posters and I got a couple little things here and there. What do you think it is about collecting in general that like lights that fire under some people?
For me, it's creating an atmosphere where I can sit down and just feel creative and feel happy. And, those are things that exactly. I wish I had my phone and I can show you around, but you can see, like up there, those are skateboards. These are, let me see, this right here, all that, those are books that are up there. Those are like art books and different books. And, those are skateboards. And right on top, right there, I don't think you can tell, but that's the Star Wars set.
There's a Stormtrooper.
There's a Star Wars set right there.
Okay. And
then over here, that right there, that's a painting. And then there's more paintings, and there's just paintings and artwork and toys throughout my entire car. I have, I started buying the 1-Up arcade machines. So I have a couple of those, and I want to get another one.
You got Street Fighter 2?
No, I have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Pac-Man right now.
Nice. And
for me, movies and cartoons and comic books and toys, those are things that I grew up with in the 80s, mid 80s, late 80s. And I guess that to me, that was like a fantasy. Like, all these pieces were fantasies, and it was my happy place. And I just enjoy being there. I enjoy, like, the creativity that the 80s had, with Transformers and Robotech and Thundercats and Star Wars, and yeah, even though the Star Wars franchise began in '77, Empire came out in '81, I want to say, and to me that was one of the greatest movies. That one along with the original Planet of the Apes were mind blowing to me. Those were when I first watched those, I was just like, wow, what just happened? You know, that switch. And so having all that around me and seeing that in front of me all the time, it just inspires me, and I just feel good. And so that to me is what collecting is for me, is continuing. And I'm a completist. It's pretty bad. So if I buy one figure and it's a part of a series, I have to have the series. I don't know why. I just function that way.
No, I have to be careful on that because the stuff I dabble in are tours. So like I get a couple and I'm like, damn, I want the whole tour now. And it's like, well, calm down, calm down. Tattooing, you do a little tattooing?
I tattooed about 10 years ago. I got an apprenticeship with a guy in San Diego named South Bay Mike, and then my friend Keith and Zombie Tattoo Joe, they continued my apprenticeship in the Inland Empire. And I started tattooing on my own after that, tattooed for a few years. And I realized that I wasn't where I wanted to be with tattooing. Basically, I was kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna leave it to the people that are, to the experts, to the guys that are really good, because it's like anything else. You really, really have to go all in order to be the best, to be your best.
You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it have like 90%.
Exactly. I didn't want to do it. The pieces weren't what I wanted them to be. And in order for me to do that, I would have to engulf myself into tattooing, drop everything else, and just be obsessed with it. And that's how I am. I'm very obsessive.
Yeah.
Like I'll obsess over things. So I recognized that I wasn't obsessing over it. So I felt like it wasn't for me. I love it. And there's times that I really would like to do it. My girlfriend, she's a tattoo artist. And so I actually I was asking her to kind of teach me the ways again, because tattooing now is way different. The tools are different. Everything's different. And she's actually really, really talented. And so I was asking her, and as I was watching her and seeing her go through the process, I was 50-50. I'm like, and see, that's the problem, is that I'm 50-50. I'm not going to engulf myself. I'm not going to become obsessed with it. But I really enjoyed it. It's fun. Just art in general, just creating. And tattooing is like nothing, no other medium. It is like nothing else.
It's alive.
It's alive. It's not as forgiving as any. It's the most non-forgiving medium there is. It's just it's fun too, you know, to meet people and to be a part of their story, and you know that it's great. But you really got to be serious about it. Like, to me, art is serious. Any art is serious. Like, I'm serious about it, and I want to give my best. And whether it's a mural, whether it's a poster, whether it's a tattoo, I want to do the best that I can do. I don't want to 90% it. I want it to be the best that I can do, for the time frame, for the situation, for all of it. I want somebody to look at it and go, holy shit, that's pretty fucking good. Yeah. And not even for anybody else, but for myself. I want to know that I gave you my best.
It's kind of like something I heard you say in a video. You're betting on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to your gig poster art, and, you know.
Yeah. And that's the way that I look at it every day. And that's why it is that I do what I do.
I'm currently looking at your other Puscifer poster. You did one other one or two other ones?
I believe it was one other one. It was the
this guy.
Yeah, that one. It was like it's kind of referencing like the Virgin Mary, but kind of giving her because there was a thing with the wrestling mask.
Yeah.
So I put the wrestling mask on her and had her carry the little baby demon instead of baby Jesus. It was a little baby.
No, it's awesome too. That one specifically, I remember seeing foils for that were awesome looking. Not that this one wasn't awesome looking in the foil, but specifically that one, the foils looked crazy.
Yeah, the foils came out great on that one. I actually like the foils a lot on that one. The colors were a little more transparent, I think, so the foil came through a little bit more.
It really pops. Last question I have: what's your favorite Street Fighter 2 character?
Street Fighter 2, the original would have to be Ryu, and then the expanded edition would have to be Akuma.
Fair enough. I would have to go with Ryu too.
Yeah, Ryu. I think Ryu and Ken were always the easier ones to kind of utilize. But I enjoy Ryu more than Ken. And then when Akuma came out, he just looked so rad, man. I was like, yeah.
This is definitely my top 3 favorite interviews I've ever done.
Oh, awesome! I'm glad. I'm glad.
I mean, I learned a lot. It's always fun to talk to somebody who is really passionate, and I think that's probably my last question: is how do you keep the fire going? You know, I've talked to a lot of artists that do art for a living, and sometimes they get really burned out, and they don't do it for fun anymore, or they do it less for fun and more for a job. And like, how do you keep it alive?
It's a tough question because, sometimes you can get burned out. I think for me, it's a little bit easier because I have so many facets to what I do. Like last week, we were working on a mural for 2 weeks. So I'll go from working on a mural for a week or so to creating a gig poster, to creating a logo, to creating some apparel designs. So I'm all over the place. I'm jumping around all the time, and it makes it a little bit harder at times because I can't just engulf myself in one thing and master the one thing. I feel like my biggest thing is I've always felt like I'm a jack of many trades and not a master of any. So yeah, I can jump on Illustrator and create some vector art and some logos, or I can do a mural with aerosol can or a canvas with a paintbrush, or jump in Photoshop and or Clip Studio, and I jump around all these things and I do all these things, and I love them all. I enjoy doing them all. So I think that's what keeps me from really like not loving what I do. It's the most interesting thing for me. I could be at my desk for a month straight working on it, or I can wake up in Japan working on a mural, and I never know. I never know what it's going to be. Like I legitimately never know where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing. And I think that not knowing and that wanting to continue to push is always going to be there, because I love knowing that I don't know where I'm going to be someday, and
I get it.
I look forward to it.
I think Albert Einstein said he'd rather be a guy who knows a little about a lot of things than a guy who knows a lot about one thing. So I'm kind of on the same page, where I like to dabble, comics, posters, podcasts. I did film school for a while.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to keep your creative juices going.
I think so too. And then the raddest thing about all of it is the people that you meet. Like, you're not just going to meet people that are doing posters or logos or design. You're going to meet those people. You're going to meet muralists. You're going to meet someone like yourself doing podcasts. You're going to meet all these people, and every single person that you meet, every turn, every crack, every piece adds to your story and adds to your creativity and adds to you. And to me, that's the raddest thing about traveling and experiencing this journey of the unknown and just continue to create.
Max, thank you so much. Will you tell the audience where they can find your stuff, where they can learn more about you and 4DF Studios? Yeah,
I have my Instagram, which is Maxx242, Maxxer 242. But mostly, I have everything on F4D Studios. It's my partner Tim Soto and I. We've been working on F4D Studios for a while now. So it's F4Dstudios.com, or at Instagram F4D Studios as well, which F4D stands for Fighting for Dreams. This is something we created a long time ago.
Nice. And thank you for coming on.
Man, thank you for having me. This was awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Spiral Out Podcast is produced by me, your host, Chris West, edited by me, researched by me. Everything is pretty much just done by me. Go to our website, spiraloutpod.podbean.com. Follow us on Instagram at spiral_out_pod. Facebook, Spiral Out Podcast. And again, if you want to see some of the images associated with this episode, click the link in the show notes and it'll take you there. Again, thank you for listening. Spiral out. Pod dismissed. Wait, that's another show.